Cities in the UK have many challenges, especially around environmental issues. Heavy pollution, together with poor design and build quality over many years, have had serious consequences for our urban population. We need to transform our cities into cleaner, greener and smarter spaces in order to increase efficiency, reduce costs and improve quality of life for citizens.
Lots of people are talking about the need for transformational change, but there aren't any vehicles to make it happen. The government-funded vehicles tend to be very risk-averse in their funding. They tend to not want to fund really wild innovations. And there's nobody in this missing middle that the World Bank identified to actually be the coordinating leaders of change.
Cities are places where we can introduce new ways of working, living, playing that actually create a lot lower emissions and create more resilient environments. Buildings account for something like between 30 and 40% of emissions. So the challenge we have is to build the kind of collaborations and connections and bring together the public and private sector and innovators in a way where these barriers can be tackled more effectively.
My frustration from a local government and procurement point of view is trying to bring that together in a product which actually significantly improves not only the built environment for council residents who are trying to improve their built environment, but also has added value around their health and well-being, holistically developing capital schemes at the same time, so bringing those two things together.
So we have a kind of a communications challenge in a way. Lots of great solutions, literally littering Europe, and yet people are not aware of those, or they're not able to kind of find their way to other places. So we talk quite a lot about creating better conditions through regulation, through financial mechanisms, through communications, so that the best ideas can flourish and we can start tackling climate change and building this new economy.
Basically now everyone's agreed that we need integrated systems thinking in cities. We need integrated planning, we need finance and insurance connected to that, and we need to mobilise innovation and young people and schools and so on into the change process. So basically the architecture of what we're providing for that programme in the next 5 years will kick-start a revolution of open source shared information. The modelling is really important so that every decision that's taken by an individual and the way they live takes you on a track for sustainable development. So it's an integration of a whole lot of small decision-making changes into the whole. So the big problem is how do you coordinate that and make sure that all those decisions are actually leading in a better direction. When we have that, you'll get collective intelligence about how to deliver sustainable development.
There's something there about that convergence of technology, but also thinking about how our communities operate, and that our communities that we're trying to impact and change have huge community positive benefit that is untapped often. So it's really, I think the excitement is trying to bring that positive asset-based community approach holistically to actually developing capital schemes at the same time. So bringing those two things together, people in place.
Bringing people together in our urban communities is a key factor in developing cities for future generations. However, another large hurdle has yet to be overcome. What can we do to find the investment necessary to ensure that cities across the UK have the funding and expertise required to develop and implement their regional strategies? The solution to this may well be in strong public and private collaboration.
I think effective public and private collaboration, where we see that working well, is where there's a strong alignment of interests to build that kind of trust and that kind of common purpose. And that's often comes down to individuals. They have an alignment of interests and needs. And then around that, you can build that kind of public-private collaboration. One of the challenges we have is that the public sector is increasingly time poor. So whilst the private sector is actually getting really engaged in this challenge around climate change, around circular economy, and there's a lot of activity, actually getting the time and the resources from the public sector to match that, to create these kind of new public-private collaborations is one of the biggest challenges.
Public-private partnerships are what I've worked in all of my life, and basically the public sector invests for social, economic and environmental value, and the private sector invests to get a return on capital. So if you've got an evidence-based system of the kind that we're trying to help cities to have, you can judge the balance between those two things. Overall, cities probably need about 60% private investment money and 40% public. If you do it in the systems way, the overall cost is reduced by as much as 40%. So actually both public and private sector benefit. Public sector can put more money into social services and the private sector can get a bigger return on capital because of the systems benefit. So that's really what we're trying to do, and I think public-private partnerships will be at the root of all of the changes that we're going to see.
Even with all this in place, the challenges are still huge. Thankfully, many experts, including architect Michael Paulin of the Eden Project, believe that they're not insurmountable.
All the solutions exist. There's nothing impossible about doing this. It just means that we do need to rethink the way that we design our buildings, and it's perfectly possible to design out the whole concept of waste. In some ways, sustainability as a paradigm, I think, is looking a little bit tired, and that's partly because sustainability all too often was based on mitigation. It was about trying to make things slightly less bad. And now I think it's really encouraging that people are shifting to a much more positive way of talking about things, how we can make cities positive or regenerative so that we can actually live with clean air, healthy food, efficient transport, and so on.